Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. Now this is going to be the first preseason patch, bringing in the first preseason batch of changes. And there is a lot to talk about, so if you end up enjoying the video, then don't forget to hit the like button. As usual, this video will be made in collaboration with ProGuides. It's a website that helps you improve your overall League of Legends gameplay and knowledge. Check them out, the link is down below, highly recommend it. So let's start things off by talking about changes coming to champions, and the first of which is going to be Aatrox, where he's receiving a nerf, where his ultimate World Ender, the active duration has been lowered from 12 seconds to 10 seconds. Not the biggest nerf in the world, but it will affect his overall teamfight potential and how much he can actually stay in a teamfight to rely on the ultimate's reviving passive. Next, we have what I think are some pretty decent buffs coming over to EZREAL. Starting off with his W Essence Flux, the AP ratio has been changed from now starting at 70% and going all the way up to 90%. And on top of this, his ultimate was also changed to now dealing 50% less damage to minions and monsters. However, it does not deal less damage to champions even if the ultimate has already passed through minions. So it's a nerf when it comes to wave clear with his ultimates, but you can definitely use this to harass people now through minion waves without the fear of the ultimate damage being super small. Next, we have one of the first biggest changes coming to this patch, and it's going to be a rework coming over to Lissandra's passive. So on top of her also having kind of smoother auto attack animations and things like that, having an increased mana per level and an attack speed increase, she has an entirely new passive that I think Riot got a little bit of inspiration, I guess, from Game of Thrones. The most basic way to think about it is when an enemy champion dies near Lissandra, they became a frozen thrall, or essentially a white walker. Once an enemy champion becomes this frozen thrall, it automatically seeks out a nearby enemy champion and it tries to get to them. It slows them when they're beside them, and it also explodes, dealing damage. Now the most interesting thing is the fact that the damage on this is actually nothing to laugh at. It starts at 120, which isn't bad, but it goes all the way up to 520 base damage by level 18 of Lissandra, with of course also a 30% AP ratio, quite generous. But it doesn't stop there just yet, because her Q ability's mana cost has also been changed from being 75 at all ranks to now starting at 60 and only going up to 72. Her Ring of Frost W, the damage on this ability has actually been lowered as you rank it up. The AP ratio has been lowered by 10%, however the mana cost has also been lowered by 10, and of course this is because she no longer has the passive that helps her with the mana sustain. The missile speed on her E ability has been slightly changed, and also her ultimate Frozen Tomb, the damage AP ratio has been lowered by 10%. So as you can see, the mana cost on her abilities overall has been lowered since her passive no longer gives her the mana sustain, but on top of that, the damage across the board has also been lowered just a tad, since now she actually has a passive that deals damage. And to me, this is going to be quite strong, and I think this new passive is going to be insanely powerful when it comes to teamfights, so watch out. Next, I want to talk about a mini rework coming over to ORNN. Now, I don't think this is going to be coming this patch, but it's really interesting and I want to talk about it anyways. So his HP per level and his armor per level is being increased, but as we move on to his passive, this is where things get a little bit weird. So it states, when ORNN hits level 11, any upgradable items he currently owns or buys in the future will automatically become upgraded for no cost. And on top of this, for the next 4 levels after level 11, each level will allow ORNN to upgrade an item for an ally, max 1 per ally, at no cost. Now, I don't know about you, I don't know what kind of good stuff Riot is smoking over at their offices, but that is actually some insane sounding passive. I'm a little bit skeptical about it coming over to the live service, so hopefully they test it a little bit further and realize that, you know what, maybe this is a little too much, but I guess we'll see what happens. He also has a few other changes to his other abilities, but I'm not going to go over them because I don't think this will be coming to the next patch. I just wanted to bring up his passive. Next up, let's talk about some changes coming over to TALIYAH, where you are going to notice that the changes are only towards her Q threaded volley. The mana cost on this has been lowered, the worked ground duration has been also lowered by almost a third. The cooldown on this ability has also been lowered at the earlier ranks, but still 3 seconds by rank 5, and it also has a new effect that states subsequent hits on the same enemy deal 50% reduced damage, also applies to minions and monsters. So in other words, her Q ability overall per instance will hurt less, however, she'll be able to use it more frequently. Now let's get into some changes coming over to items, starting things off with our Doran's shield. A fairly quick change that now essentially makes it heal potentially more HP based on how much HP you're actually missing. Then what do you know, we have yet another rework, or I guess mini rework, coming over to Gwynce's Rageblade. This item will now cost you a little bit less gold. It has a changed effect where the passive now states basic attacks deal 15 magical damage on hit, and it has 2 new passive effects. One is called Last Whisper, one is called Dissolve, but they do essentially the same thing in their own respect, where they offer offer armor or magic penetration, respectively, based on your champion level. In other words, this item becomes a hybrid champion's wet dream even more now because it still gives you the mixed damage, it still gives you the magical damage, it's a bit cheaper, but it also gives you double penetration, while still having the unique passive where basic attacks grant you attack speed up to 6 stacks, at which you proc Quince's Rage that makes every other basic attack trigger on hit effects twice. So maybe champions like a Kali, maybe champions like a Jax, maybe even some kind of hybrid Tryndamere build might become pretty broken with this. While we're on the note of this new Dissolve term, you can see Void Staff also has a unique passive now named Dissolve, so you can't stack, for instance, Void Staff and Rage Blade together. Also very quickly, and I don't think this will make it to the next patch as well since it's related to ORNN, but ORNN also has 2 new upgradable items, one of which being a Youmuu's upgrade and one of being the Frozen Gauntlet upgrade. And they're called Youmuu's Wraithblade and Frozen Fist respectively. Youmuu's Wraithblade will offer you now 75 attack damage, 10% CDR, 25 lethality, plus 40 movement speed out of combat, and an active effect of 20% movement speed for 6 seconds, while Frozen Fist will give you 95 armor, 20% CDR, 700 mana, and still offering you that on-hit effect where it does that AoE slow. This is actually quite cool because, especially for lethality assassin users, there is really nothing to upgrade from ORNN's upgrades into lethality items. There's nothing that works with it. So it's great to see that finally Riot has at least helped the lethality champions just a bit if they happen to have an ORNN on their team. But now we're going to get into some juicy preseason changes to actual gameplay. Now, you probably know some of these already, but we'll go over it once again. Now, starting things off, we have the new turret plating. Now, I'm sure you've seen them in other videos or my videos or something like that, but essentially turrets now up to, I believe, 14 minutes have an extra layer of shields, 5 of them exactly. And as you break them, they become not only more difficult to kill for each layer that has already broken, but you get bonus gold for breaking each layer as well. Now, after about 14 minutes, if you haven't destroyed all the turret platings already on the outer turrets, because they're the only ones that have it, they automatically fall off and the turret becomes much more vulnerable and a lot easier to kill, so that essentially if the game is just progressing really slowly, this will actually kind of force it to almost speed up. Following this, we also have some new, runes coming over as well called stat shards. Now, I've talked about this before, but I'll talk about it again. Essentially, what it gives you is 3 new rows of runes to choose from. This is essentially paying homage to the old rune system where you had just kind of runes that gave you flat stats and you can choose which one you want and which one you want to focus on, etc. So in row 1 of the screenshot you can see here, you'll have either to choose from between extra damage, extra attack speed, or extra CDR. Row 2 will give you also extra damage, or you can choose between extra armor, magic resistance, or maybe even a 4th one that they might add. And row 3 gives you either the option between extra HP, armor, or magic resistance. Again, depends on the champion that you're playing, it depends on the matchup that you have, blah blah blah. Just depends on how you want to play out the early game and what kind of flat stats that you want, or if you want to go for maybe the extra CDR or attack speed, that's going to be a little bit more useful as the game progresses, gives you more options, which is always a good thing. Following this, we also have a new change coming over to the bounty system. Now, I'm sure you guys are aware that the current bounty system and how it works is the more fed you are, the more kills you have without dying, the higher your bounty, and if you die, you always give that person and the team a lot of gold. Now, for the most part, that is going to remain, but on top of this, it also is going to start kind of prioritizing more on how much, of a CS lead you have, how much more CS you have than the opponent you're facing, the overall team in general, and that will also contribute to how much your bounty gold is worth. And Riot states that bounties will be accrued approximately 70% from champion kills and about 30% from minion and monster gold. So now truly the further you are ahead, the more gold you are worth, so you have to be really careful with how you play. We also have some minion changes coming in as well, where the minions not only will just overall move faster, but for the most part, they'll also just be more impactful and scale harder. And in some instances, they'll scale less technically, assuming the game doesn't last more than 2 hours, but at certain points in the game, they'll be much stronger than they currently are. Then you also have cannon minions that'll essentially just be spawning more often, and as they get further and further into the base, they'll actually be naturally more and more tanky to the turrets as well. Minions will also no longer gain bonus stats based on your team's average level versus the enemy team's average level. They'll just be the same throughout the game, which in a way is a good thing, I guess, because it makes the game a little bit more even in that sense. Following this, we also have the Baron buff, where the minion protection from champion damage has been changed from being 75% champ damage reduction for melee minions and 50% for casters to now just being 65% across across the board. But it will no longer give minion protection from turret damage. And speaking of Baron buff, we also have new epic monster respawn timers. Elemental Drakes now will respawn a minute faster, so 5 minutes rather than 6. Elder Dragon respawns now every 6 minutes rather than 8 minutes. And Baron respawn timer has been lowered to 6 minutes from 7. So you can see here the game is trying to be forcibly much, I guess, faster paced overall, which is always pretty fun, but scaling champions might suffer, we'll see. Now, the final thing I want to quickly talk about are some changes coming over to new runes and just reworks overall. So first we have Celerity. It has a completely new effect that just simply states all movement bonuses are 8% more effective on you, no longer giving you extra damage. We also have a complete rework of Dark Harvest, where I guess in theory it still works the same, where you still harvest souls, but the way you harvest souls now is by damaging a champion that's below 50% with literally anything from your champion. Abilities, auto attacks, even spells, summoner spells, etc. But at the same time, when you do damage them and proc Dark Harvest and gain a new stack, you also deal a bunch of extra damage, which of course also scales based on how many stacks you've acquired. We also have a new rune called Shield Bash, where the TLDR is, while shielded, not only are you tankier, but your next attack is also going to be doing bonus damage based on your bonus health and the shield amounts. So champions like Victor are obviously going to have an absolute orgasm whenever using this rune. And we also have a mini rework coming over to Kleptomancy, where it states after using an ability, each of your next 2 attacks can grant 5 gold, or something nicer, only attacks against champions grant you a reward. Similar concept, but now instead of only 1 attack, it's actually 2 attacks. And there's also some minor changes coming over to the runes as well, which you can see on your screen, but I don't want to go over them too in depth. And the final thing that I'll talk about is, of course, some new skins. We have the new legendary Eclipse Leona, we have Coven, Camille, and Lissandra, and we have the new Pajama, Guardian, EZREAL, Lulu, Lux, MF, and Soraka. But that is going to be about it for this video, guys. There you have it, a bunch of new changes coming over to the next patch, being patch 8.23. Again, this is going to be the first actual preseason patch. All the big changes are coming this patch, so be ready. There's a lot to remember. There's a lot to kind of notice and to play around with. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed the video as well. If you did, hit the like button, share with your friends, let everyone else be up to date as to what's coming to League of Legends in just a couple of days. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you for the next video. Peace.